Cleopatra is one of the most emblematic female figures from antiquity and played a central role in one of the most remarkable conflicts of the Roman Republic. She reigned as Queen of Egypt from 51 to 30 BC as part of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which came to power following the death of Alexander the Great. Cleopatra stood out for her remarkable personality and significant influence over the events of her time. She held the position of the last ruler of Egypt before this territory was annexed as a province under Roman rule. Cleopatra was known for her multilingual abilities, her firmness and autonomy in governance, as well as her romantic relationships with two prominent figures in Roman history, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Cleopatra was born in the year 69 BC as the daughter of the Egyptian pharaoh Ptolemy XII. Her birth took place in Alexandria, Egypt, although her cultural heritage was predominantly Greek. She had a deep appreciation for the refinement of the court and her own vanity. Cleopatra had the habit of adorning herself with jewelry made of gold and embellished with precious stones such as diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, and rubies. These magnificent jewels were commissioned from skilled craftsmen or given as gifts by close associates and members of her family. Egypt had been conquered by Alexander and became part of the Macedonian Empire in the 4th century BC. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, control of Egypt passed into the hands of one of his generals, Ptolemy I. Due to the Greek heritage of Ptolemy, the Ptolemaic dynasty was heavily influenced by Greek culture. As a result, the native language spoken by Cleopatra was Greek, and her education followed the standards of Greek culture. She dedicated herself to the study of philosophy, rhetoric, arts, and other fields of knowledge. In a notable contrast to other members of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra made a point of learning the native language of the Egyptians, thus demonstrating a special interest in the local culture, although she remained fluent in various other languages. Cleopatra ascended to the throne of Egypt in the year 51 BC, after the death of her father. At the time of her ascension, Egypt was facing serious financial problems stemming from her father's reign, and it was also under the imminent threat of annexation by the Roman territory. To exercise her rule in Egypt, Cleopatra was compelled to enter into marriage with a man, and it is believed that she was forced to marry her own brother, Ptolemy XIII. Ptolemy shared the governance of Egypt with Cleopatra, but she was determined to make decisions on her own, not allowing her brother to interfere in her choices and actions. This disagreement led to a conflict between Cleopatra and Ptolemy, culminating in a war that erupted in 48 BC and forced Cleopatra to flee from Alexandria. Interestingly, the ongoing power struggle in Rome between Julius Caesar and Pompey became intertwined with the conflict in Egypt between Cleopatra and Ptolemy. This was because after a defeat in a battle, Pompey sought refuge in Egypt. However, in an attempt to gain the support of Julius Caesar, Ptolemy chose to assassinate Pompey and send his head as a gift to Caesar. Julius Caesar sought to establish a joint government in Egypt, involving the two siblings, but the proposal was rejected by Ptolemy. Ptolemy's troops launched an attack against Julius Caesar in Egypt, resulting in his siege for several months until Roman forces arrived to rescue him from this situation. Julius Caesar retaliated, leading to a confrontation with Ptolemy, who tragically met his death by drowning during the battle at the age of 15. After Ptolemy's death, Cleopatra became the lover of Julius Caesar, and from this union a son named Caesarion was born. Cleopatra even visited Rome at one point, staying at Caesar's residence, who was married to Calpurnia at the time. However, Caesar's extramarital relationship with Cleopatra was not well received by the Romans. In 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated, prompting Cleopatra to return to Egypt, where she discovered that her son, with Caesar, had not been designated as the primary heir of the deceased Roman leader. After the assassination of Julius Caesar, an event that deeply shook Roman politics, a response emerged from his allies and followers. A second triumvirate was formed, composed of three significant figures: Mark Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus. Initially, the primary objective of this new triumvirate was to seek vengeance for Caesar's death by initiating an intense pursuit of those responsible for the assassination, Cassius and Brutus. After seeking vengeance for Julius Caesar's death, Mark Antony consolidated his power as the ruler of the eastern provinces, including Egypt. During his rule in Tarsus, he sent invitations to Cleopatra requesting her presence. Cleopatra answered the call, and after their first meeting in 41 BC, she and Mark Antony became lovers. Mark Antony and Cleopatra's relationship lasted for over a decade, resulting in the birth of 3 children: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene II, and Ptolemy Philadelphus. It's important to note that this relationship was never official, as Mark Antony had 2 previous Roman marriages, one of them with Octavia, the sister of his rival Octavian. The tension between Mark Antony and Octavian escalated around 40 BC and reached its peak in 32 BC, when Mark Antony repudiated his wife Octavia to formalize his marriage with Cleopatra. This action by Mark Antony deeply displeased Octavian, leading him to use this as a pretext to obtain the Roman Senate's authorization to declare war. The tragic outcome of this war for Marcus Antonius and Cleopatra occurred in 31 BC, when Egyptian forces suffered a defeat at the Battle of Actium, placing the couple in an extremely dire situation. Troops led by Octavian invaded Egypt, and after receiving erroneous information about Cleopatra's death, Marcus Antonius chose to take his own life. Following Marcus Antonius's death, Cleopatra was captured by Octavian. However, to prevent being taken to Rome, she took her own life in 30 BC. Cleopatra found herself confined to one of the rooms in the palace, where all deliveries were meticulously inspected to prevent any suicide attempts. However, somehow she managed to take her own life by introducing one of her hands into a bowl that contained a snake among the fruits. When Roman soldiers under the command of Octavian entered the queen's chamber, they found her lifeless, dressed in her royal attire. Cleopatra's 2 twin children vanished from the pages of history. Caesarion was killed by order of Octavian, eliminating any possibility of political ascent for the queen's son. Alexandria, once a center of knowledge, transformed into a mere Roman province in Egypt. However, Cleopatra was never forgotten, remaining the most famous woman in the world and the last queen of ancient Egypt.